And we are live. Hello and welcome to another episode of the FreudenFreude weekly live stream, where we bring you content to help you grow and develop as a person and as a leader.
I'm Sandra Corona.
And I'm Claudia, and we
We are
coaches.
coaches.
Better this time around. Better this time.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yes. So I'm a coach for expatriates, for leaders as expatriates, and for youth, young professionals. So that's the kind of coach I am. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I am a professional coach working with corporate leaders, entrepreneurs, as well as their teams in tech and beyond. So there we go. Today is one episode again in our intercultural series.
Yes.
And for
Yes.
those that are listening in, they might be wondering, aren't we always talking about the same thing? Yes and
Hmm.
no. We are talking about culture groups and how you have to deal with becoming part of them and adapting to new norms, which is at the core of so much of intercultural miscommunication and all the issues that pertain thereto. So yes, we're taking different approaches about talking to the same things. What's your take on that, Sandra?
Uh, so yes, it seems like we're like every time you hear somebody talking about culture and everything else, it sounds like it's the same thing, but there's so many variations, there's so many colors when you talk about culture, and it depends on how deep you want to go in the topic, right? It depends on even how dark you're willing to go, because it's about history, right? Culture is historical. We are living under certain cultures, rules, and ways of living. And so nowadays, with all of these changes and everything else, well, it's a huge definition for certain cultures that might find a little bit of frustration, might find a little bit of resistance on accepting change when it comes about their culture. So yes, sometimes Claudia and I learn about new things about culture, or at least we see it from another way. And then we are interested in talking about that because we we talking about the topic, like we said, we don't want it to sound the same thing. We just want to bring you some knowledge and understanding as to why cultures sometimes are resistant to change, or how some cultures uh, go through the process of changing, right?
Right, right. Well, the thing that I want to re-emphasize here is that culture doesn't mean moving to a foreign country and being, these huge transitions. Sometimes culture change is moving into a different team at work. Sometimes
Right.
culture change is becoming a new family member by marriage, and all of a sudden you have to
Yeah.
adapt to that. Culture is everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And culture, that's why when we're talking about different cultures, we talk about different culture groups and
Mm-hmm.
not so much about different nationalities and things like that. Of course, ethnicity and race and nationality factor into what can make up a culture group, but it's way beyond that, right? And so I'm sure that a lot of our listeners have come into contact with walking into a new job and
Mm-hmm.
having to adapt to a new corporate culture or startup culture or
Yes.
whatever, size the business was culture.
Mm-hmm.
And how, so very often it's this how things are done around here, right? Figuring out how things are done around here, if we maybe stay in this example. And
Mm-hmm.
it is made up of both explicit rules and norms, and
Mhm.
is made of the implicit ones, the ones that are not really talked about here, the historical ones, the jokes that you don't get.
Mhm.
Everybody laughs about it because they have the cultural background, the history that makes it funny, and you just sit there, what are they talking about? And it refers to an anecdote in the company culture, those kind of things. And sometimes it's a bigger shift than others. Have you had to adapt to different corporate or company cultures, Sandra?
Uh, well, company culture, yes. Oh God, yes. I'm thinking about it. I'm trying to figure out uh, how to say it, because how many times don't we go into a company, right, and it feels good, it feels right. You walk in and you're like, yes, this is what I want, this is what I like, people are very nice and this and that, and appearances is because of course everybody's going to treat you good because they need you, they want you. So they're selling themselves so that you can stay and you can say yes, should you be offered the job. So I remember the last culture that I was in, it was, how can I say it without something negative? It was challenging.
One, good one. Another one might be it was interesting. Yes.
Exactly. It was, yeah, it was, in fact, very, very challenging. And, but the point about the culture is that we forget to do our homework. How many times recruiters, and I've read this throughout the years, and I think that's one of the things that I do want to stick with, that they say, do your research. There's a lot of apps out there. One of them, and this is my biggest secret, but I think a lot of people know it, Glassdoor. Glassdoor tells you reviews from people about the culture, whether you are a good fit. But let me ask you now something. Let me throw the ball back to your court, Claudia. If you wanted to know about a company's culture, have you ever dared to actually send an email to somebody and say, hey, can you tell me about the company culture?
Yeah, actually, I did it, over the last few days, actually, because if you have a contact, I reach out about that. I say, I will have an appointment as XYZ C-suite person. Do you have any
Mm-hmm.
tips for me? Anything that I should watch out for? But then I do go to the website. I look at their values, but also how you know the way that they live it is implemented through the work that they do, the customers that take on. If for instance they're a service company, let's say something like that, the publications that they do as a company, go
Yeah.
to the LinkedIn profiles, see what they post as well. So is there alignment between this brand that they project, from their marketing department, and the way that people show up? What's the tone, for instance, of their communications? Are they truly hyper professional? Are they more casual about it? That gives you a big indicator. How much do they
Mhm.
say I versus we? Things that give you that sense. Of course, social media is social media. We can present a front on social media. I'm not pointing here at people and saying they do, but it gives you the opportunity. So how believable is it? But on the other hand, just how you set up an appointment. How do they talk to you? If I come in as an external coach, how do they treat me from a first impression? right? Do they pick up the phone, these C-suite people, or do their secretaries do that, for instance? Or is it a more impersonal email? So all these things really factor into already how they engage, because chances
Mm-hmm.
are well that when they get in touch with you, or when they get in touch with the audience on their social media, that it's kind of flavored by the culture that they have at work. If it is a really casual workplace, you know, they are not going to put this hyper academic professional persona on LinkedIn necessarily, right? They're going to stay in that narrative that they have.
Mm-hmm.
But otherwise, frankly, research is all nice and good, but you have to feel the energy in the room. Okay. It's like I cannot shop for clothes online or by window shopping. I have to go in there and I have to try it on. Does it fit? How does it make me feel? Okay. So, research is important also for you to reflect, do their values fit with mine? What are the
Mm-hmm.
questions I want to ask during
Mm-hmm.
this interview or proposal meeting or pitch meeting or just a networking meeting, right? So it gives you some reference, but otherwise, listen, I'm a coach. I always live in the moment. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
when I was my clients, when of course you have a plan, but you have to just be in the moment and listen. And
That's right.
listen to your the person you're talking to, the team you're talking to, but also listen to yourself. Be aware of your own reactions and then go from there.
Mm-hmm. Correct. Um, I was thinking about how recently my husband was treated. So, he had the accident. And when we talk about cultures, not so much office culture, from the outside, from an outsider's perspective, yes, it would be culture. But when it comes office culture, I'm going to tell you about one of the most beautiful experiences my husband had, which has changed a lot of his ideas or perspective of how things are in Saudi Arabia. So, with the accident, he was picked up by the ambulance. They treated him amazingly. It was so professional. It was so caring. Like one of those things that we miss, right? Because we are Gen Z, you and I, we're Gen Z. And we remember when people were kind and gentle with you and they just did their job. That's what my husband experienced. But in that process, he was treated with so much care that my husband felt special. And that's the truth. When you're in a fragile state, what you need is gentleness, right? You need that attention. And let's remember that in this case, this kind of fragility or vulnerability is based on you feeling out of control. You don't have control of what's happening, right? So you need people to come to you and gather and make you feel, hey, everything's okay. Imagine if something like that happened in the office for all the newcomers, things would be totally different. So anyways, he's back in the office and everybody, he came here, his coworkers came to see him to the house. His boss was calling him and they were wondering, hey, when are you coming back? Hey, don't rush it, feel better, blah, blah, blah. Well, he tells them, no, I'm coming back on Monday. So this past Monday. When he arrives, they all are standing there receiving him with this huge cake. It had a cyclist, that was on the floor with his arm, all the with bandages and everything else. And you could see that it had like a little cross here, and his bicycle all just made, a mess and everything else. And they said, get well soon. It was so caring.
Yeah, it was personalized. It was like about him. It
Yes.
was not just mechanical.
Yes.
Okay, let's get a cake off the shelf, but it was done with some care.
Yes. Yes. And that made me rethink a lot how we can start creating a better culture, because let's be honest, this came from the top, right? This doesn't come from the employees. This is something that is deep rooted in the Arabian culture, where if you're feeling sick, if you're feeling something, they send you baskets, they send you food. I mean, it's ridiculous. Okay. But my husband had not experienced something like that.
And actually, I think that you will be hard pressed, I think, to find something like that. I have worked for what I consider good companies in the past, but I would wait a long time. I would have waited a long time to get a gesture like that because I think
Mm-hmm.
it's just not as normal anymore. I'm very happy
Yes.
that A, he is recovering well, that he's back at work, and
Yes.
also that he had this level of support. So
Oh, yes.
uh,
Yes. Yes.
take him, continued recovery wishes from me, and I guess from all of us.
Thank
But
you.
yeah, go ahead.
Yes. So the point here is that if we want to create a culture, a working culture of togetherness, of working as in a symbiotic way, right, where everybody is fairly worked, not overworked, but just a fairness of work where people help other people. You have to start from the top, and that is what his boss did. He gave the initiative to say, "Hey guys, this is good, and we're going to do it." And his friends, they were all joking and everything else, which means that they have a very nice culture.
Right, because one thing also to not forget here is that yes, your husband got this support, but what does it do to the mindset of everybody? You feel like if something happens to you, they are going to catch you as well.
Yep,
And
absolutely.
so it gives you kind of this faith, or this I mean, certainty to the degree possible, but that you are not alone and that you belong there and that you're special, not just as a producer of contribution, but as a person.
Exactly.
And I think that that is a very beautiful message here
Yes.
to
Yes.
bring across. To bring across.
Exactly. It's not about just coming to work, do your things, and bye bye. They actually, my husband always told me that they had a nice environment and things like this. But also, my other point is that sometimes we go to work, with low energy, sometimes a little bit frustrated, disappointed. And my husband already starting to feel for the longest time. And this has made him revive his emotions, his love for working. He actually bought a frame for his card that they gave him. Yeah, remember.
Right, right. Amazing, amazing.
So it changes people's psychology, and now he's happy. He's going to work and stuff like this, and he's looking forward to going to the office. That is what it does to people.
Culture. Yeah. That is how things are done around there. And
Yes.
and if we come back to maybe the topic of today's show, adapting to culture group norms as a newcomer. You brought on a very important point earlier as well, is the whole thing of onboarding.
Mhm.
Onboarding new people in a company, which is essentially giving people some guidance on how things are done around here. And, how do you think a newcomer would feel when there's this anecdote being shared and maybe there's a picture on the wall of that cake? It's very strong cultural information that can be passed along as well. I think that it becomes all a little bit more tricky if maybe we're not in a work environment, or we're not in a work environment where any of that is being taken into account. You are a newcomer, you get into a new culture, whether you travel, you join a different country, a different social group, or a different work environment, and all of a sudden nothing makes sense, and you literally feel like the fish out of water, the fish out of its water. All of a sudden you become aware that it just doesn't make sense the way that your usual way makes sense. People react in ways that don't necessarily make sense, and you don't necessarily know what is different. um, if you're doing something wrong, it just does, it feels off. It feels off. And that can be hugely destabilizing. It can really throw you for a loop. And you lose your reference points, your reference rules in your head. All of a sudden you're playing like a game with different rules that you don't know.
Mhm.
Have you been in situations like that, Sandra, where all of a sudden there were some things that just didn't make sense?
All the time. um, uh, I think one of my let's say strategies of starting a new job used to be of me doing what a lot of companies out there say. Hey, first, keep, just observe. Don't immediately jump into giving proposition. I mean, sorry, suggestions. Um, Take your time, listen, learn, and at least give yourself a month to a month and a half before you start suggesting, because in that time you start doing your research. Wow. I started finding, yes, that it was a little bit dysfunctional, but at the same time, it was a lot in your face and a lot in your private life. Everybody wanted to know about your private life. Everybody wanted to, for me to talk about other people, right? The chit chat thing. They wanted me to be a part of that. I, I was never part of that kind of stuff. First of all, because when you arrive, you don't know anybody. Okay. And so it's like, what am I going to tell you? I don't know. What do you want to know? Because that's really the question. What do you want to know? So, yes. Then on top of that, there was constantly this thing about wanting you to produce and be independent, but not letting you be independent. So there was a lot of confusion, I think. And I think it was a lot about the leader wanting to control, but at the same time, wanting their team to pull as hard as we could from that rope so that we can do things. And that was impossible. That just felt like it was a struggle every single day. I had to go through that door. Before going through that door, I'm sorry, I would stand there and be like, I would pray. And then I would say, God, just make it a good day. Just let me get through the day.
Yeah.
Because it is hard.
It is hard. It is hard.
What about you, Claudia?
Well, I think that Like I remember, because I also did a lot of consulting as part of the, corporate selling that I did back in the day. So I dealt with a lot of different companies, and I was, you engage with different companies at different levels as well, from the ground floor team lab manager all the way up to like C-suite people in that case.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not so much maybe something that English speakers can relate to, but the level of language that you choose and how it can rub you the wrong way. English doesn't have to polite form. Many languages on this planet have a casual form of addressing somebody and a polite form of addressing something. Tu vous vois quelqu'un en français, you use the polite form. Sie siezen Leute auf Deutsch. So there's these different ways of doing, and then even some Asian languages, like for instance Korean, has several levels of politeness. Okay, and you have to kind of figure out which one to use with the right kind of people. And
Okay.
that can already be very interesting, because you can think of company cultures or team cultures like bubbles that exist, yes, in the greater context of a country, or maybe even a larger company culture. You have these little different culture groups that are sometimes relatively small, and each one of them has their own rules. And if you walk into a room expecting to be talked to in the polite form by some individual contributor or something like that, and they talk to you extremely casually, not only using the casual form of language, but also a very casual way of talking, and the vocabulary that they use, it can throw you. Yeah. Um, and the same way, it's like you can't take yourself liberties with addressing somebody that you don't know in that culture using casual language, which doesn't need to be impolite, mind you. Casual speech does not mean being impolite. You can still be respectful, when you use the more casual you in those in
Mm.
things. So language
Mm-hmm.
can be a huge adjustment. How do people even talk to each other? Okay, and even if that is ironed out, it's in the details. Like in a Zoom meeting, are you able to, even if it's just one on one, are you able to interrupt? Do you need to wait until they kind of signal you body language wise that it's your turn to talk? Do you need to make a gesture? And then of course, if it's small teams or large teams, it's a whole other spiel. So it's the devil lies very much in the details, the everyday interactions. How you don't want to come across as inappropriate, because people might think that you're disrespectful, and
Mm.
even though you are not, you just don't know. I think that I have gone, and I have sometimes just talked about it. I say, in case I say something that is not how things are done around here, let me know, because I do not mean any disrespect, and let's just figure out how to work together. I say that when I start working with teams as a team coach, I put it out there. I say I don't have all the answers, and I might say something that that might irk you, or come across the wrong way. So let me
Right.
know, because I come here with good intentions, and if something comes across, there's a misunderstanding. So let's talk about it. Um, but culture sometimes can really be disconcerting. I remember I once went to southern France from America, and I was there to certify a British consultant to provide train. Hello?
Yeah, give me a second. Sorry.
Okay, I'm going to tell the story here. I was sent to southern France to a company to certify a consultant from the UK that was supposed to deliver trainings for the company that I was representing. And so I was essentially, in this case, his, if you think of it, his superior, meaning the one with authority to acknowledge his work or not, if you want to think of it that way. We are good friends to this day, so he knows it's not meant in any pejorative way. And so I walk in, and this was an engineering site, it was a technology site. Are you okay? Are you okay?
Yes, I heard my husband scream and all that kind of stuff. I was like, oh my God, something happened. He fell. Just talking to the dogs.
Okay, okay. So,
Sorry.
so as I was standing next to this consultant as the engineers came in for this training, and every single one greeted him, some shook his hand, and walked past me, not even acknowledging me as I was standing next to him. Every single one. And I assume, and this was also what this consultant later confirmed to me, they thought I was just the assistant because I was just a woman. And I remember the looks that they gave me when I introduced myself as essentially the senior person, having been sent from headquarters to certify this consultant in this task. And it was something that was not in their culture. Okay, because a lot of engineering sites, and I remember this also from my graduate studies, I was very often the only female in the room in my particular area of study. So you see that these expectations and these assumptions that shape culture can really sometimes make things uncomfortable. uh, and real huge miscommunications. And if I had wanted to, I could have made a fuss about it. I didn't. It's not worth it. It was not meant in any bad way, and it wouldn't have added any value by me making a big deal out of it. But it's like, that's culture. That's culture. It doesn't need to be, huge things. It's all in the details. And so it's destabilizing. It's like, what are they doing?
But you
Right?
know what? Yes, but I think it also has a lot to do with the micro society that he is part of, um, where you can actually say that that person is the kind of person that walks into a restaurant and most probably treats a waiter like somebody that is just there to do their job and not somebody that is there to serve you, to give you, they're giving you your food, so you might as well treat them right?
They're the
And
ones that never say hello to the janitorial staff as they come through the
yeah,
office and
yes.
clean, right? It's this what is visible and what is not visible to you. And
Yep.
the way that you interact with different style of people. For me, people are people, and I greet the janitorial staff just as much as the wait staff, just as much as my colleagues. But see, it's my way and my culture. And the difficulty is if we think that our way of doing it is everybody's way of doing it and then pass judgment when they don't.
Yes, yes, yes. I was listening today to a guy, his name is Jordan Peterson. And sometimes I like him. He does say a lot of good things. Other times I'm like, oh, this is BS. But today he was talking about the history that people have about culture, the cultural background, and everything else. So depends on, for example, I wrote this, a lot about our culture is about values, beliefs, habits, traditions, right? All of these things that we talk about all the time. So he said something very interesting, that when people abandon their beliefs for in a positive or in a transcendent, meaning his way of saying transcendent was in a supposition moment, a moment of let's say when you move to a country, a new country, when you move to a new country, for a moment there, you have to put or set to the side your beliefs, right? Because you're learning new beliefs, not because you want to adapt them, but because you have to understand them. So when he said that, he said, when we abandon our beliefs in a positive way, it usually leads, and this is where I was like, oh my God, it usually leads people to become pathological. I was like, what does he mean with that? Well, what he means is that if people decided that those values or those beliefs did not work for them, they most probably start questioning their own values and beliefs, right? And they start wondering, questioning themselves, like, how do they fit in? Is this a good fit for them? And that is why we have so many people now a little bit unwell, right? Because they've had, in a way, found themselves to believe that they have to leave their values and beliefs because there's this new generation coming in and they don't understand what's going on. So they no longer feel that they fit in their own culture, and leaving their values and beliefs leaves them feeling like, I need to find something that makes sense. Yes. And I feel that in a way, of course, in a smaller way, when you talk about company cultures, this is something very interesting. And I found myself having to do that because, well, work is work at some point. And you kind of abandon your own values and beliefs.
They have a new puppy, people. That is what's happening over there. They just adopted another puppy that is huge like this, by the way, and is apparently taking their house apart. So there you go.
sorry. In a small space way, when I had to give up my values and beliefs in order to continue working. That's the truth. And so that's when you start feeling miserable. That's really the word. That's when you start feeling that you don't fit in, that it's not the place for you. Sorry. Keep talking, Claudia. Let me take this. Oh, thank you. Can you take her up? Thank you. Thank you. She's up.
There we go. That's the closed door right there.
Yes. So yes, I think he said it in a way that it was social, the values and beliefs in a social environment. But when we talk about office and all that kind of stuff, you have to wonder. Yes. Yeah. And it does make sense when he said that. It was like, when you abandon your values and beliefs, you start feeling like you don't fit anywhere.
Because it's kind of like, imagine that you move to a place or enter a culture group where everybody wears rose-colored glasses and not, or let's say green-colored glasses, because we don't want to use the cultural think that rose-colored glasses mean you see everything nicely, but just green-colored glasses. If you start looking through these green-colored glasses, everything that you thought you knew about color and whatever looks new to you. And as you then look at yourself and your own behavior through this different lens, you will notice that, oh, okay, so this is how that comes across if you look at it through green colored glasses. Okay, so the thing is that you have an opportunity to self-reflect. And some of the things that were part of your belief system might not make the cut.
Mm-hmm.
Very normal, or at least not in this environment, and you will adapt because it's all
Mm-hmm.
about seeing what is still fitting, what does need to change, and so on. Interestingly enough, it wherever you go out, and the more varied your experiences are, the more sometimes adaptive, flexible your belief system comes, the less rigorous it might actually be, because you realize that in a particular area, for instance, the 10 places where you have lived, everybody does it differently. So you are not holding tight to any one set of rules regarding that particular thing, okay? Because it's like you just go there and figure out, okay, how is it in this case? Are they going to do it ABC way or XYZ way? So your way becomes less dominant, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And if you have always lived in one place. I have been an expatriate and I have been a repatriate, meaning having been away for a long time. And I guess if you ever go back to the US, you're going to have the fun in that as well, Sandra, is that even if you go back to a culture, let's say that you grew up in, having been away for a long time, it makes you a newcomer again
Oh
to your
yeah.
culture.
Yeah.
Okay. First of all, culture evolves over time, meaning that, let's say, in my case, Luxembourg from 20, 30 years ago is not the Luxembourg of today. A lot of things have shifted. And if I were, for instance, to come at it with some expectation that it has remained the same, I would be, sorely surprised. On the other hand, it's like even norms that might have been second nature to you back in the day, now all of a sudden might be a bitter pill to swallow, or might surprise again, even though they haven't changed, but they do not make sense anymore in your now new model of the world and your belief system and so on. And it's not always straightforward, especially since everybody around you thinks that since you're a Luxembourger, since you grew up here, it should make perfect sense to you. And it doesn't. I
Mm-hmm.
personally think it's not a bug, it's a feature. Okay, the fact that I have been away and traveled a lot and worked outside and so on, and for me, I do not necessarily want to fit in, to that degree. I do not
Mm-hmm.
want to go back to the person I was before I ever left, because what's the point of that? I couldn't if I wanted to. But everybody thinks that there's nothing different about you and nothing different about your view of the local culture. And both things have evolved. I have evolved and the local culture has evolved. So it's like a completely new meeting. A completely new meeting. And so I think that some repatriates might find that interesting. And the longer you have been away, or the more varied your experience while you were away, the more destabilizing it's going to feel. And
Mhm.
you know, I think that that plays into so many things, because our expectations that culture or behavior or rules or norms or mindsets do not change can be, and the assumptions that we bring to it can be hugely disadvantageous. If you think that maybe your client or your team or a customer organization or family members or whatever remain the same with the same rules that you kind of remember, you know, not so good. So I would think it's important to resist the temptation to assume and
Mhm.
just put in fresh and just listen and watch and learn and, you know, check. Maybe 90% still holds, but don't assume it still holds, but rather have an open mind and be aware that very often norms have changed over time, even in cultures that you're familiar with.
What you're saying is something that I've been going through in the past, I would say months. Um, I've been trying to find a middle place where I can understand myself with the new generations and still stay true to my values and beliefs. I have found it difficult. I'm going to confess. I have found it, I thought that I was very open minded. I've realized I'm not. But I think it also has to do with age. Same way as you change, as you move through life, as you age, your idea of your finances change. So does your value towards your finances, because, well, you are going to retire eventually. You have to, you want to go on vacation. You have to do all these kind of things that make you you and give you or re-energize you, right? And so I think it has to do with, for me, very personally, that with age, we change. And you said it's about consciousness, about being aware. Well, I think it also has to do with how much consciousness we have of actuality, of our current moment. How much do people now are aware of what's going on? And it doesn't make sense, because I think we've already agreed that with Chava, he has made us see that it's true, common sense is not the same for you and for me, right?
She is
And,
referred to Chaba Toth, the
yes,
and I think owner of ICQ Global.
yes, yes. So, I having consciousness of what's going on right now, I think it's a lack. There's a lack of consciousness of what's going on. There's a lack of consciousness of the generations that are still part of this world right now, right? Because I'm not planning on dying anytime
So
soon.
just maybe clarify for me and others here, when you say what's going on where, at what level, what are you referring to?
So,
Consciousness
for
of.
example, okay, let's continue talking about corporate culture. So corporate culture, I was part of a company, the last company that I was there. They were very open with LGBTQ, with uh, uh, support groups. I mean, they had everything from reading groups, from book clubs, I'm sorry, from single mothers. I mean, there was all of these options. okay, where we all, the intention was to all live or work in this case under the same roof in harmony, right? Um, and I realized that certain things that are going on right now that are trying to change in the office, certain rules and regulations and all this kind of stuff, who do they fit? Who do they benefit? Okay, who are they trying to benefit? What are they trying to do? I know that companies are trying to do the best so that everybody can feel comfortable, but the truth is nobody's ever going to be happy, right? And so even though you have awareness,
Strong statement there. Nobody's
yes,
gonna be happy. Okay.
yes, awareness of the situation is being aware that even though I get what I want in the company, there's always still going to be something that I'm not going to like. There's always going to be something that I dislike or want to dislike. Okay. And so I think that if people had more awareness of what's going on of the situation, I think we would go back. We would go back to our values and beliefs of respecting one another's values and beliefs so that we can all form that culture that we all want. Because I found this thing, like I was thinking, well, how can we all live in harmony in the office? How are we proposing all these changes in the office if we're not willing to respect other people's values and beliefs? Right? And I see it every single day. They want this, but at the same time, they, and I say they is people in the office, young people, old people. There's this clash of things that no, this is how we do things here. And then the young ones, it's like, but but we could do it this way. And the problem that I find in that, which is why I mentioned the situation about my husband, is that most of the problems in the office happen because there is no clarity on who is the person that makes decisions and choices. Who's the one that sets the expectations? Who's the one that, guides the group towards where they have to go and how they have to go, right? Or the leader is weak and is not willing to be a leader in that way. He believes that workers have to solve their own problems and he just wants results or she just wants results. So I think that I have found myself struggling with the new ideas because how can I continue proposing that things change for the best if I feel constantly attacked on my values and beliefs?
I think that one of the things related to this, and please allow me to open a parenthesis and see if it resonates. A large chunk of that is we want to personalize the workforce. I think many companies want to personalize the workforce to make it more welcoming, to make it more encompassing, that people can bring their whole selves to work.
Right.
But see, there's a price to pay for that.
Mm-hmm.
There was a time when people showed up in a professional way and they tried or were at least expected in no uncertain terms because it was made explicit to please leave the drama that was not not a part of the professional workplace thing, to please leave the drama at the door. If you just broke up with your boyfriend, if you just had a bad hair day, if you have financial trouble, if you're getting married next months or next summer, and all those kind of things. They had a little bit of space at the water cooler, things like that. But it's not something that permeated everything that was done, because you showed up as the engineer, you showed up as the manager, you showed up as the marketing person, and what was front and center was your very personal but professional contribution. Nowadays, you are the marketing person that is going to get married next year. You are the engineer that just broke up with his or her significant other, and so on. And if it muddies the waters as well. And so to then rein all of that in a more systematic way that makes sense for everybody, to embrace that, to welcome it, but not have it be so much of a detractor of the professional contribution that needs to be made. Yeah. And if somebody does not value an opinion that you gave in a meeting, to know that it is on professional grounds and not maybe because you identify with a particular gender or another, for instance, right? It is a
Yes.
professional workplace, and decisions are made in a professional setting. And I think that not many young people ever got taken aside by a mentor, and that was ever told them. I just said something very, very, very strong, but I think that there's just this lack of awareness of what it means to be in a professional workplace. And when the manager 3 levels up talks to you a certain way, it's not necessarily to impeach on your values or belief systems or your personal self-concept. It is because it has to do with results and contributions and performance and all of those kind of things.
Yes.
And I think that the waters have become very muddy.
Oh, yeah.
And so I don't have a solution. I'm not claiming I have some. This is just a personal, my opinion, observation. And so I just put it out there.
Yes, it's because we talk about this because we're talking about the newcomers, right? So imagine this scenario that we just painted, that somebody is just stepping into the office and there is no appropriate onboarding program because they just don't finish to agree what is good, what is bad, what is best for this person, what is best for the company. Is it best for the company? Are we looking for HR? Are we looking to benefit us? So I think that if we were to just leave things very clear, because there's a fear, I think, of people saying what we really want, right? It just seems that our voices have been shut down a little bit, right, of what we want, because there's still a lot of our generation that's still working and they will continue to work. And as much as we want to be a part or make the new generations feel comfortable, it's just impossible. It's impossible because the companies are not willing to speak up and say, look, this is how things are. Okay, well, this is how we're going to manage them. Yes, people are going to be unhappy, because I've had bosses that have said that. We've come to a decision. There's a lot of people that are going to be happy. There's a lot of people that are going to be uncomfortable. And then there's the middle ones. Okay, but this is what we decided. There's no more that thing that we're going to make a decision. So a newcomer, when they see that, they're just not going to fit in the culture immediately because they're not going to know what to do.
Yeah.
We need to make them come comfortable with the company.
On the other hand, you have some that are overconfident and that come in with no filter and no no boundaries and
Oh yeah.
this okay, let's first observe, let's see how things are done around here if we talk again
Mm-hmm.
about culture and norms and rules and so on, but they just behave without a filter really and so you
And
see
nobody wants to say anything to them. That's the problem.
somebody maybe never says something, or alternatively, maybe something is said, but it's not being heard. And then
Mm-hmm.
it kind of like people stop saying it,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And what does it do to the overall company culture if there's disruption like that?
Yes.
Wow, we touched on a lot of heavy duty things here. Didn't know
Oh,
it go quite that way, but do you have something else to say, Sandra?
I think we were, I was just getting started. I was starting to, I was starting to like the topic because, again, I feel that this needs to be discussed because if companies, I feel that companies are letting employees run around like crazy and they're just looking from the top, looking at just let them kill themselves, let them let's see if it works. Oh, they want to try this. Okay, let them do it. I feel that that's what they're doing instead of coming together, as executives, as C-suites, and talking with professionals and saying, okay, we want to achieve this in the company. What do you suggest? And then make it happen. But no, they're just looking from the top, like, look at that one.
But on the other hand, it's it's a tough job to systematize because it is so unsystemizable to some degree. You cannot put everything into a program or to a guidebook. Let's keep this as a subject for next time. Okay, like capture some
Yes.
energy, take some notes as we go offline, and let's continue this discussion. I hope that people listening in here got at least some value out of it. We would love to hear about your experiences and your insights on this matter. If you want to come and join us, join our discussion and share what you have learned, and contact us in the comments or on social media, because I think that this is something that more people would have more ideas about than just
Oh,
us
yeah,
ladies. So let's
exactly.
discussion. But if you felt that there was some value in here, please show us some love and hit that subscribe button, notification bell, engage with our content on social media, and we would love to hear from you truly. So, do you have anything to add? Otherwise, we're going to wrap it up for today.
Wrap
Okay, fantastic.
it up.
We will back with more on this topic. Our next intercultural intelligence thing is going to be in 4 weeks, I believe. So we hope to hear from you. Thank you so much for listening. Great job today, Sandra. It was a pleasure discussing
Thank
this.
you. Likewise.
And go take care of your puppy.
Yes. Thank you, Claudia. Thank you, everybody. Have a
Bye
good
bye.
night.
Bye.
Bye.